You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
The art of persuasion is crucial to the success of any entrepreneur. And according to my next guest, most businesses have great services, but ineffective marketing and a very weak persuasion game. Joining me today is Joshua Lisec, who's going to share how he grew his business into a $1 million a year industry and wanted to bring you on today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Great. Pleasure to be on with you today. Thank you.
Absolutely. So Joshua, you come from rural Ohio. You built this $1 million a year business plus. Where did that start? What's your past experience and how did that bring you into what you're doing today?
Sure thing. For those new to me, I'm a professional ghostwriter. I'm the founder and president of Lisec Ghostwriting. Our niche is in ghostwriting books that convert readers into sales qualified leads on behalf of the author's company, whether they're a consultant or they're a coach or they have a software company and they want someone to go from reading the book to subscribing to the software and staying with it. That's the one type of book we specialize in. So it has a lot of persuading to do, hence talking about the art of persuasion, because persuasion is a concept. It's concrete when you say, well, what is the form of persuasion? Well, it's visual, or in this case, it's literary persuasion. And we do a lot of best practices of copywriting, direct response copywriting tactics and techniques throughout the books and throughout the promoting of the books to get readers to buy the book and then buy everything else that the author sells. I got into this business completely by accident. In fact, my objective being a homeschooled youngin was to be a novelist one day. That was my lifelong ambition, Chris. Well, I was 20 years old when I achieved that. I got a 2-book publishing deal for my first 2 novels. And while I was going around promoting my books, something interesting and unexpected happened, which was a nice little plot twist in life. And that was that 2 of my readers of my novels said, Joshua, you've written 2 books. You're 20. I wanted to write my own book longer than you've even been alive. Maybe you can help me out here. And they said that they wanted, both of them, interestingly enough, who didn't know each other. They both said they wanted to write their autobiography. But when they tried it themselves, it was kind of a Wikipedia entry. Born here, went to school here, had this many kids. It was just not an interesting read. And these are individuals who were well known in their industries. And they can't just publish a Wikipedia article and call it a book. That wasn't going to fly. They wanted memoirs that read like fiction, where they were the protagonists and it was from their perspective. And I did this. And it was interesting. And there was characters, dialogue, descriptions, so on and so forth. And they employed me to do it. That's how my ghostwriting journey began. And I've been doing a memoir mashup style book for many CEOs, executives, investors, and founders, where we pull their most interesting life experiences. And that's part of the story that makes them the expert and the authority. So a lot of persuasion goes into this. And of course, frankly, being a very, very little known homeschooled kid from the middle of nowhere, you have competitors who are New York City, for example, who interned at the largest literary agencies in the world that receive 2,000 queries a week. You're going up against New York Times bestselling authors themselves. Now, I have now done traditionally published books. I have done the mainstream bestseller, not just #1 Amazon bestseller that sold 3 books in 1 hour in an obscure category, and mom bought 2 of those 3 copies. But actual bestsellers like the Wall Street Journal best-selling list, books that have sold collectively hundreds of thousands of copies so far. So a lot of people say, Joshua, what do you know that's useful in how you did what you did and built what you did, but also what you do for your clients? Because there's 3 levels of persuasion that have to happen, Chris. I have to persuade the clients to choose me. I have to write something that is persuasive enough for the reader to want to buy the book. And then I have to persuade readers again to take the cross-sell or upsell that's inside the book itself. So this skill set is rare, is difficult, and is useful. And so often people want to know, well, how can what you know in your space map onto our own marketing and sales techniques? And I have a number of programs and services and also insights like we're going to get into today that can help people persuade better inside of their own business. So that is my, not in a nutshell, more like in a coconut shell sized intro on myself.
That's fantastic. Love the history. And isn't it kind of funny how some things in the universe, they just fall into place. You didn't necessarily expect to get this sort of, gig ghostwriting for other people, but you did it yourself. You showed it can be very beneficial and helpful, and other people caught on to that. They took notice, and obviously that persuaded them well enough to convince themselves to say, "Hey, I need to reach out. This is the strategy I want to do," and take it from there, which is just fantastic. And you mentioned within the art of persuasion, there has to be storytelling, because, like you said, a Wikipedia entry just isn't going to cut it. I mean, stating facts like they're a press release just really don't bring in the listeners or the readers necessarily. So when it comes to crafting this story, is there a formula behind creating that persuasive story? Is there like this intro? You mentioned protagonist. Do they kind of follow certain rules?
Here's what's interesting about persuasion. It's not one size fits all. I'll give you an example for this. It's context dependent. So on social media, particularly on Twitter, now called the X platform, there are a lot of people who sell very cheap, low quality information product. And they sometimes will sell thousands of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. People might remember in 2007, 8, 9, and even earlier those years. I come from that era of like information product marketing and online marketing, kind of like generation like 1.1 of internet marketing. And it was common to throw your thing up on ClickBank. People might remember ClickBank from those days. And you'd write this long and sophisticated sales letter it might be 10,000 words for a $97 ebook that was 17 pages long, exported from a Word document. And yet you'd sell thousands of those things, thousands of dollars worth. It was absolutely ridiculous. We're seeing resurgence of that on social media. Now, I mentioned earlier this thing about not one size fits all. Where am I going with this? A particular sales tactic that's used amongst these information product marketers, particularly on the Twitter X app, they'll run a sale. My $97 PDF is only $20 or something like that. Or, we're running a special sale where we're only going to limit, kind of 100 sales of these. And they will say, we only have 9 left. Now, if you think about this literally, and they will say 9 left, buy now, 9 left of a PDF. Is it possible to literally, actually, honestly have only 9 left of a PDF download?
Right. It's like they're trying to create this scarcity that you're seeing right through it.
And yet it worked.
I've seen a lot of that information product marketing before. So it's resonating with me. Yeah.
Now, take that to B2B enterprise sales. We only have 9 licenses left of this B2B enterprise app that we're selling. And it's $50 a seat, and we're selling to a 500-person organization. Only 9 licenses left. You will get blocked and banned from ever communicating with anyone in an organization ever again if you pull that stuff. But that's persuasion. That's the problem with the way persuasion is usually taught. People think it's one size fits all, and yet it's context dependent. It's also awareness dependent. And to get a little politically incorrect, it's also IQ dependent. The persuasion you must deploy is going to be based on, frankly, the intelligence of the audience that you are attempting to persuade. And this can change very quickly in B2C, that's business to consumer, business to business, or B2E, which is the enterprise, where in that case, it's a decision maker who is not the person who's actually writing the check, who's not the person who's using the product, who's not the person you're even working with to deploy it in the first place. You have to persuade a laundry list of job titles and individuals and up and down the organizational hierarchy to complete the sale. So persuasion is not one size fits all, especially if you read a book like Influenced by Cialdini, where, we need to use urgency and we need to use scarcity, and you deploy one urgency tactic from here to there. And it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So what people usually ask me when I explain something like that is they'll say, how did you learn all this? That's usually one of the questions that comes up. I learned it from necessity. And this is going to be a useful reframe for everyone watching, everyone listening right now, that you can use at home with your own business, your own thing you're trying to sell. When I transitioned from being novelist to being a professional writer for hire, I networked with other writers who were freelancers. And I asked them, so how do you market? How do you sell? Like, what do you do? What do you charge? Like, I make $10,000 a month. And at the time I thought, wow, 10K a month. That's amazing. I don't even make that like in this ridiculous period of time at my corporate job that only lasted 11 months, and watch my TED talk for that whole story. But they would say, Joshua, it's 10K a month. It's amazing. You could totally do this. And then they would say how, okay, so I charge per word for blog posts is this. I charge per project for books. It's unless it's fiction, which is per chapter. And they would talk to me about how they would pitch their services and structure their contracts and whatnot. And it was priced according to their labor. So they, well, if something's going to take longer, you should charge more for it, was the gist of it. And it's like technical topics need to be like 10 cents a word, whereas general audiences stuff is like half a cent per word, something like that would be the typical conversation. And they'd say, you have to basically write between 5 and 10 hours a day, 6 days a week to make 10K a month, but it's going to be worthwhile. This is what I was told. Now, that's the usual frame. The reframe of that is writing is only valuable if it sells something. So usual frame, writing is worth paying for because it takes a long time and effort to make happen. The reframe is the writing is only valuable if it sells something. Now, I learned this very quickly because trying to make a living as a professional writer past these first few book projects, when I would talk about what I would do for them, they wouldn't say, Joshua, we're looking for a writer here. We're looking for a copywriter. They would say, Joshua, we're looking for leads, qualified leads. They would say, we've got a bunch of products we need to sell on our website, but I don't know what to say about them. We could give basic information, but that's not going to make people want to buy them. Joshua, can you write something that makes people want to buy our stuff? That's how they thought about it. So if I came back and said, okay, that's going to be 25 cents a word, that is not anywhere in the realm of what's important to them. Why? They're incentivized now financially to have me use as few words as possible. But we know that the longer the sales letter is, the higher the conversion rate. Why would I be charging 25 cents a word when I can charge $10 a word, for example, because of what it's going to do? Now, you learn this the hard way when you charge someone $200 to write a piece of content that sells $100,000 worth of product in 1 hour. True story. I did that a number of years ago. And I realized, I felt like, wow, it only took me 45 minutes to blast through a whole ass sales letter, man. This was amazing. With 45 minutes for $200, do the hour on that. I'm making blah, blah, blah per hour. That's absolutely amazing. $250 an hour, right? And then he makes $100,000 off of it. And I thought, oh, shoot, I'm doing everything wrong here. Oh no. And then you realize that people who are ghostwriting books, you can get on Upwork and see someone who is a New York Times bestselling ghostwriter will write you a whole book for $5. And yet that person who gets that book will turn around and send that book ahead to their dream 100 prospects and turn around $2 million in new deals because they sent that book out that they would not have gotten otherwise. And the freelancer charged that for that. Now, what we have here is an asymmetric information issue. The person writing it doesn't know how valuable it's going to be, but you go through enough of those cycles learning firsthand how you get paid a teeny tiny amount for something that without it existing, the author client or the client as the business owner would not have made this massive sum of money. You got it all wrong. So I learned persuasive writing because number one, I want to be able to pay my bills. So I learned what works and what doesn't work, practically speaking, across like 100 different industries, writing all manner of content from blogs to books. But I also realized that I needed to price my own services appropriately. So now I'm one of the more expensive ghostwriters that there is. Not the most expensive, but more expensive because of the sophistication and the anticipated ROI of one of my clients. So if they send out if they send out 50 copies of their book to potential clients and they get 3 of them, and those 3 become retainer deals worth $10,000 a month, why would I charge $5K for doing a book? I should be charging $105K or $150K for that book. And I do now. I'm in that price point because I've run the numbers on the anticipated ROI. So this is one of those persuasion approaches. I won't call it exactly a strategy or tactic or technique. Because remember, it's all context. Persuasion works if you can put numbers behind it. People say, oh, well, humans buy on emotion, justify logic. That's true. What we do is we rationalize. We say, well, I'm going to pay Joshua $150,000 to ghostwrite me a book because I can rationalize that when we send it out to our current client, they will refer this amount of new business to us. When we send it out to our Dream 100 prospects, Maybe we'll close 3 of those, but each of those is going to be multiple 6-figure deal in just the first year alone. In 10 years of us having hired Joshua, we can expect this much new business. $1,000 then becomes really cheap relative to hiring a marketing agency and working with them for $15K a month for 10 months. Where at the end of the 10th month, if they fire the agency, whatever they got is everything they're going to have gotten. If you don't get any leads after the 10 months, well, I guess it didn't work. It's risky. So it's risky to hire a marketing agency, much riskier than to hire a ghostwriter whose output you could use for the next 10 years, every single year, every single month within those years. So a lot of people listening to this right now, you're not exactly taking away tactical advice. What you're taking away is a way to reframe what's valuable, what you could charge. And this is how we have been able to create a $1 million business every year for 3 years running now and do some of the numbers that we talked about. It's because you can demonstrate a track record of having gotten this before. This is why persuasive writing is so valuable in understanding what works, what doesn't work, why it doesn't work, and what to do instead.
That is so valuable. And when businesses, honestly, when they're looking for more sales, they need help with marketing, they're trying to accomplish this goal at the end of the day, always that ROI. What value can I receive out of this? And that's, like you mentioned, how they rationalize the decision making. And again, as you go through business and you realize what your worth is, now instead of imagine $200, that $250 an hour, how many hours do you need to work? I mean, gosh, that turns into a lot. Nowadays, you need 7 or 8 clients in order to hit your $1 million revenue, but you're demonstrating results. You have the value. And what you mentioned is the reframing of it. So important. We kind of get stuck into the old teachings, the old education, the old perspectives of what works, what doesn't work. But you mentioned just as important, it's the context. Know your audience. Is that message going to resonate with them? And it's one of those things that you just have to, either try and fail and then you succeed later, or you listen to Joshua here and just take his advice and then say, okay, this is the strategy we need to implement.
Yes. And when you think, okay, we're gonna do persuasion now, that does not mean, like tips, tricks, tactics, and hacks and hactics. Like, okay, well, we're just gonna run a sale. That'll move people, or 9 left, or we're gonna use, this quote is only good for 5 business days only, or the price doubles. Let's do that. Where it's smarmy. It doesn't really work. But the problem is it worked enough in some industries that when we think about being more persuasive, it's, what works over there? Wow, they sold $300,000 worth of courses to their audience using the 9 left strategy. Well, let's do that. I want results like that. Let's do that with our consulting service. And it just doesn't translate. What does translate is the following thought you must plant into your prospect's mind, regardless of the market. And the one thought you must plant into the prospect's mind if you're going to persuade them to buy from you and you alone is as follows. This is going to be worth it. This is going to be worth it. And what it takes to get there, it differs from market to market. Persuasion is the process by which you state change, meaning you go from one state to another state. Like how a good example would be going from, let's say, vapor to water to ice. That's a state change. We need to move them from a binary state of no, I have not yet bought this product, to yes, I have bought this product. Persuasion is the art of state change from that. I'm a non-buyer to I'm a buyer. And anytime you're changing states, there's risk involved. So persuasion is a process of de-risking state change, because everything has a sacrifice, has a cost. There's the money you're spending on this product or service, but there's also giving up the opportunities available to you had you used that money on something else. So the opportunity cost, it's called. It's also time. The time and energy and thinking you invest, you could have invested elsewhere. Most products are extremely expensive, even if they are $5. Even if they are $5. And so if you can sufficiently de-risk the time, the attention, effort, the energy, and of course the money that goes into your product, buying it and using it, then in what they perceive is the cost, the collective cost of other products and services, then you win, friend. You absolutely win, because you've given them the thought, oh, this is worthwhile. This is going to be worth it. And a corollary thought to that is, this is worth more than anything else we can do with that time and that money.
Yes, it's a tough challenge to try to persuade someone into that way of thinking. You mentioned before, knowing your audience, and are they even problem aware? A lot of people like to focus just, here's my features and my benefits. And the business owner doesn't even know what problems this is going to help solve just yet. You need to help educate and inform them a bit about that. What is the problem? What are the potential solutions? And then beyond that, persuade them to say, this is worth it. And you're the only person that I want to work with to make this happen. And it's one of those processes within the buying journey that you don't realize until you're actually getting that next client, seeing what's working, seeing what's not, that kind of takes you through that learning experience until you can get to that next level. It's incredible.
Absolutely. And what's so neat about it is when you see that state change where someone goes from resistant, they go from skeptical, they go from objections to it all gone. It's amazing, but it's a bit like dominoes and that it's inevitable. If you line up 10 dominoes close to one another and you knock over one at a time, the 10th domino falling is inevitable unless the dominoes are too far apart. And that is a metaphorical visual of what most marketing and sales is. For example, people will cold call or cold email. Hi, I'm selling this product. Would you like to buy it? The 10th domino is them saying yes, but what you just given them is the second domino in the chain. The second domino is here. And really, the next domino should be right here next to it so it can fall down. But that next one is spaced way out here. So it's going to literally fall flat and they're not going to do what? They're not going to buy. The reason they're not going to buy is because the one that happens right before they buy should have been here. The one before that should have been here, and then 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 came that cold call, that cold email. Like a much simpler cold email would be something like, hey, I'd like to cold email with you with a pitch for my product, but it's only for this type of person who has a type of problem. Is that you? If not, I'm not going to pitch you. And you can delete this email and block me. That's an appropriate cold email. I have your permission to pitch you my product is an appropriate cold call. If you're cold calling on behalf of your company in a sales role, you don't cold call in a pitch. The first thing you say is, hi, I'm cold calling you. If you feel like that's going to be a waste of time, you can hang it now. Otherwise, do you know why I called you specifically? That is a correct cold call. And it's the same with everything else that's possibly out there that you could do. It must be context appropriate. The context is, they never heard of you. They think you're spam. So how do you go from the state change of this person is a spammer to this person can help me? There's only one pitch that can do that. And it is that, hi, I'm calling to spam you, but you might not think it's spam if it's actually relevant to you. Would you like to hear it? Or do you want to end the call now? That's a 7-second pitch. And when you realize that, oh, wow, I guess so, you can map that onto everything else that you do inside of your marketing and sales efforts. And then you might realize that when you have a sales call with somebody and you send them a proposal afterwards, you then think, well, they're going to sign in the proposal and they're going to buy, right? Wrong. The proposal is what you send after they've said, yes, we're doing this. We have the money. We have the budget. Where do I sign? That's the correct placement of the proposal. So what we're expecting in these two scenarios is we're expecting this second domino to somehow knock over a domino that's way on down at the end without any of the dominoes in between. Within the proposal, we're expecting it to function like a direct response sales letter. And that's just not what it does, because that's not how people make decisions, because that's not how you create a state change. I do a lot of work in hypnosis, and I'm a certified practitioner of hypnosis through the largest organization in the world that assigns accreditation and even licensure for professional hypnotists. And everything in hypnosis is state change. Going from I feel bad to I never feel happier, to I have this problem to I no longer have this problem. It's a state change. And the problem with hypnosis, frankly, is that it works too well to be a viable business model for a lot of people. So someone will spend thousands of dollars every single year on medications and supplements and expensive exercise programs to lose weight. They will then have 3 hypnosis sessions that cost the collective stuff, and then they'll instantly have a transformation internally that results in the weight loss that they wanted. So the hypnotist only got paid $750 for a problem that was worth many tens of thousands of dollars, according to their previous purchasing behavior. Now, that person will probably refer new business so they can thrive on word of mouth. But in terms of like average customer value, it's extraordinarily lower being a hypnotist than being a pharmacist or a pharmaceutical manufacturer, even though the pharmaceutical manufacturer can make a lot more money without actually solving the problem, but by treating the symptoms. So you see this sort of hidden game of how persuasion really works across industries at the highest levels. And you can see sometimes the most effective product is the one that's the worst to sell. It's the worst to sell. And that's a bad situation to be in for a lot of people. And I see this over and over and over again, where someone designs an amazing product and it's low margin, long sales cycle, and only one-time purchase. And even though the world is a better place that product exists, they can't sell it. Or rather, they can't make a living selling it. And every industry has thousands of such examples. We don't know what those products are because they were terrible business models. Most people haven't been to a hypnotist. And the reason they haven't been to a hypnotist is because hypnosis is not going to go mainstream. The reason it's not going to go mainstream is because it works too well. And that's about the size of it from the hypnosis perspective. So we can go in any direction you'd like to, Chris. I'm sure you got some follow-ups and intersections on that.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think what you described is perfectly accurate. What they're treating in the pharmaceutical industry, healthcare, is they're treating the symptoms because you don't make a living or a business out of treating someone and curing them, right? You need a longer term business model. And just what you described with the low barrier to entry, the low cost, it's a one-time payment and it's a long sales cycle. Literally, that is working so hard towards such a small payment. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for the business owner and the person who is the receiver of the product or the service. They may feel it's too good to be true, or they place a lower value on it because they see it as a lower value. And they're like, well, this isn't worth my time. I'm not convinced. I'm not persuaded enough to take that next step. And it's something that we try to change within our sales cycle. We want to choose something with higher margins. We want to have less friction, ability to fulfill the product or service. And again, take that to the next step, scaling. That is very hard to scale something very low cost with a long sales cycle. It's a challenge.
Yeah. And hypnosis has a long sales cycle because from first hearing about it, people think it's bunk. They think it's mysticism or they think it's showmanship or what have you. And if all they'll ever pay for hypnosis is less than $500, which it is in most cases and for a lot of clients, unless they find somebody who has a lot of issues that they can help, which is in some cases what the case is. As someone having trouble sleeping and has spent thousands and tens of thousands of dollars on therapists, on meds, on supplements, on tracking apps, all this stuff, and they go to a hypnotist and the hypnotist, according to the patient, that the hypnotist or the client reports being quote unquote cured, can't use that because of the FDA, which is another problem, is the hypnotists can't often be honest about how good they are, or else the FDA will come after them because you can't say you cured that person's cancer. Even if what literally happened is exactly what I just said, they can't say that that's what happened. By the way, if you read any professional hypnosis journal, you will be shocked at the number of miracles that are dropped in the case studies, in the stories of these, without any bombastic claims. They will say things like, client reported having been diagnosed with endometriosis 7 years ago and an inability to be fertile. The client desired to have multiple children. Doctors confirmed that it would not be possible due to the advancement of endometriosis. The patient experienced 7 sessions of hypnosis over a 2-month period. Following the 6th session, the patient announced that she was pregnant with triplets. 3 years later, she was pregnant with her 5th child. End of story. And what we just described there is literally a miracle. And yet it's like, oh, that's normal, everyday, average, and that happens all the time. Yeah. And yet that client would has probably spent tens of thousands of dollars on pharmaceutical mainstream treatments to this disease, which otherwise would have left her barren and childless. And yet, how much did those 7 hypnosis sessions cost? $90 each? So for less than $400, she purchased a miracle. Now, I ought to say, obviously, that these results are not guaranteed. Results are not typical. Whatever the nonsense the FDA has you say about such matters. But these sorts of stories are dropped casually because they're so common. Things like, this paraplegic was able to move their limbs for the first time in 25 years, was able to walk across the room in a state of hypnosis. This demonstrates and it's like, wait, what? What did you just say?
I think they're just casually glossing over all the highlights there. They let you.
There are entire religions that are based on what you just described, and people believe that person was literally a god because of results as to what you just described. You did this person in a state of hypnotic trance. So if you want to understand persuasion to the maximum extent, you got to learn about hypnosis, because persuading a paraplegic to be able to walk, persuasion doesn't even begin to describe what you have to do to that person's brain in order to make that sort of thing happen. And of course, there might be a few comments saying, oh, obviously he's lying. That couldn't possibly be. There's no such thing as hypnosis, which, by the way, at the title of a real book, there's no such thing as hypnosis. But it invites a lot of skepticism. And that ties in with my own book, which is called So Good They Call You a Fake, because I work with clients who have gotten results like this in their domain or in their space. And one thing that they consistently hear is, well, that's fake. Obviously, you couldn't do that. Well, obviously, he's lying about the endometriosis or the paralysis example. Obviously, it's fake. But the point is, you're such a master of your craft that your results look fake. And that's the best marketing there possibly is people accusing you of being a fake, because there's no way you could have helped someone with endometriosis have 5 children. That's not literally possible. And now everyone with endometriosis wants to learn about hypnosis and find a local hypnotist, right? Because somebody's accused that person of being a fake and a fraud and a scam.
It's almost like the bad news can be good news in terms of publicity, but the fact that you can achieve such great results like that to the point where people think you're fake, I mean, that has to create some buzz around it and kind of gets you to that next level that you need to go to. That's incredible.
Exactly. But the pursuit of mastery is indistinguishable from a miracle, regardless of the industry. And therefore, haters and naysayers are your best marketing, because they tell everyone negative feedback is transmitted and is shared much more common, much more often, much further, with much greater, let's say, energy than anything that's positive. So, for example, I have written 89 books, 4 under my own name, 85 for clients since 2011. People will run the numbers. I'm 32 years old. People will run the numbers on how many books per year that averages. And they will say that's literally impossible for you to accomplish something like that. Literally impossible. Now, of course, each of my clients have experienced that, and they know that that's possible, all of them. And I have maybe 30 clients of the 89 or 85 rather, who have come out and said, Joshua's my ghostwriter, and I want you to know that because now you'll go buy the book. So my personal brand has risen to that attention. And I recommend that for everyone. It's becoming high profile. The best thing you can do for your business is to be a high profile personal brand that's behind the company. But people said, look at this liar Joshua over here. There's no way he did that. Versus if I had said, let's say I claimed I'd only written 8 books. Nobody would care. Now I learned this because I first got negative feedback and people calling me a liar. After like book number 40, I announced I'd written 40 books. Somebody said, oh, no, you didn't. Obviously not. You're lying. Like, don't listen to this guy. He's obviously lying. That's not possible. And of course, I felt really shaken up by that initially, getting that sort of feedback. Like, how dare you, first of all. Second of all, why would that not be doable? This is just everyday normal stuff for me and my output as a writer. That's not even that many words. And that's when I realized, oh, wait a second. All publicity is good publicity. All reviews are good reviews. Oh, the worst review is to not have a review. Publicity is no publicity. I think I can make a living based on this. And that's when things, again, that really turn for me in having a multi-million-dollar ghostwriting business, is realizing that being so good, they call you a fake, a liar, a fraud, a scam, and a cheater, is the correct demonstration of persuasion prowess.
Wow, that's fantastic. And just like you mentioned, it's that key shift, that aha moment that you had that said, okay, we need to build this up. We need to take this in a different direction. And I love what you said about building the high profile brand, the person that you are, that can then propel other businesses and your own business as well. It's so important. One thing I wanted to touch on before we end the show is the 3 key themes. If we haven't touched on them yet, or touched all 3 themes on how to be persuasive when you have a very small audience and the limited ad budget. And I assume that is showcasing your trust, authority, and expertise within book writing or something similar, right?
Yes. And it also maps onto other areas. So we're going to cover each of them. There's relatability, there's resonance, and then there's a third theme that we'll touch on in just a moment, because it does there's a little bit of unpacking and explanation. So the first 2 are what you talk about, and the third is how you talk about it and to what extent you talk. So I mentioned relatability and resonance. Hypnosis and its sister practice called neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, talked a lot about rapport. Rapport is what you create through the combination of relevance and resonance, or relatability rather. Being able to relate to someone is the first step to persuade. And it's not necessarily a step. We like to call it a theme, as you said, because it's not something you do once, like you take a step. It's something that needs to recur as a motif, as a theme throughout your work. And the relatability is not them relating to you. It's you, the business owner, the entrepreneur, or the marketer, relating to them. That means you need to be doing your market research, being able to relate to them. What are they buying in your industry? Why are they buying it? What results are they helping to get from it? What results are they not getting that they paid for or thought they paid for? You need to know this. This is how you'll be able to relate to them, to sympathize, to empathize, to know why they're buying what they're buying and what for. There is a framework in business called jobs to be done, the jobs to be done framework, JTBD. I am a religious believer in jobs to be done. This idea that customers buy tools to get jobs done. They choose the tool they perceive to be the most valuable given their budget and timeline to get that job done. So it's your job to relate to them and to understand why they're buying what they're buying. Otherwise, you're just out here hawking benefits and features like everybody else. So relate to them so that you can have resonance. Resonance is that a little explanation is you ever see a speaker? Ever see a speaker, like one of the big speakers, like in the 80s or 90s, hook up to the cassette player, it'd be booming out there. Or if you have this speaker that you set up next to your computer monitor, right? How speakers work is there's this little thing that actually sends out the sound. It's like a little speaker, but the box that's in has resonance. When the sound waves come out of a little electronic speaker device, what happens is they come out all into that box area, that open area. And what do? They bounce around inside the box like this, and then get sent out through the funnel shaped, like the inverted funnel shape. People who have a speaker know what I'm talking about. Resonance is the process of all the sound bouncing around off everything, one in itself, where it's all coming out. That's what's called that's resonance. Audio engineers will probably take issue with my layman's explanation.
They know what you're talking about. I think
yes,
it's the
they will call
phone,
me a
but
fake. They'll call me a fake.
yes.
But that's resonance. Now, when you are talking to your market in your copy on your website, your emails that you're sending out to them, or their books, remember that research you had done so as you could relate to them. You are going to use their verbatim. You're going to repeat it back to them, their own words, like resonance. When the sound comes out of the speaker and it bounces around and it creates this massive effect of all the sound coming out all at once. You are the resonant, meaning you are repeating over and over and over and over and over their own words that have come out initially from their own mouths, or this customer base, this market's mouths, the verbatim. And I did this literally. I go look at reviews of my clients' books and they say, I bought this book and I felt so inspired, but I can only give it 3 stars because there was just so much money that was required in order to actually implement the advice. And so what I would put in the description of the next book, for example, would be focused on that these are low cost, easy to implement solutions, so that without a big budget, I would use the verbatim of those other reviews. And that's just one simple throwaway example, but that's the idea of how you have relatability and resonance together. And then the third one is about personal branding persuasion, personal, powerful persuasion, which is becoming the VIP of a VIC, very important person of a very important cause. I do this on social media. This is how you build up an audience or following. People don't like to follow people who are advertisers or marketers, generally speaking. They like to follow advocates of something that they agree with. I have grown an audience on social media, particularly on Twitter or the X platform. I don't have the biggest platform in the world. I have 31,400 followers-ish on Twitter, now called X. But my posts get between 3 and 6 million impressions or views per month, which is great if you want that sort of, let's say, reach as a marketer, as a personal brand, as a business owner. And one of the ways I do that is talking about persuasion in public, specifically manipulation. So persuasion is win-win, manipulation is win-lose or lose-win. And so my very important cause is preventing manipulation. It is attacking manipulation. It is attacking the manipulators so that people can know who's out to manipulate them, who's out to get them to take a drug that's actually going to be harmful to them, to their children, for example. And how do you tell? So I will call out regularly persuasion techniques that are used by unscrupulous characters. So people will follow me because I have become a champion against manipulation. I become the very important person for a very important cause. Now, the resonance and the relatability and the VIP of the VIC may not necessarily have a direct connection, but these are the 3 keys that I have found how particularly an individual become a persuasion powerhouse. Right? And again, that's doing your homework, doing your market research, finding out exactly what tools people are buying them in your industry. Why are they buying them? and then repurposing those reviews into your own copy, your own marketing messaging, your own sales scripts, so that you can have resonance where you're amplifying, to use the audio term, you're amplifying what they gave you in the market research. That creates rapport. At the same time, if you want people to keep coming back to your content, to your marketing communications, be it your newsletter or your social media, as a brand, as a personal brand, think of a cause that's very important to your market that's also directly related to your area of expertise. People hire me as a ghostwriter because they want a persuasive book. So I need to have something related to persuasion that's my very important cause that's not directly related to me promoting my goods and services. Good thing there's no reason to follow me. I'm just literally a walking, talking ad. I need to be adding value. And every one of you listening, you have a very important cause that you can become the champion of that gives people a reason to follow you, keep following you, and buy all your stuff.
Joshua, you are blowing my mind over here. This is incredible. Such a unique and valuable perspective that you bring with, honestly, it's results driven. You know what you're talking about. You know what you're doing. Where can our listeners find out more about you, your business, your company? How can they get in contact with you?
As I said, my best shenanigans are over on the Twitter app, now called the X platform, at Joshua Lisec. I also have a number of book publishing and book writing related trainings and videos on both on Instagram and on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. Well, my website is lisecghostwriting.com. I've hinted throughout this that I have a number of books, products, and services, or product services available. Of course, my book's So Good They Call You Fake is on Amazon and Audible and elsewhere online that fine books are sold. And then if you visit my website, lisecghostwriting.com, you can see the dozen or so persuasion related courses that I have over there. Appreciate you letting me hawk my wares here, Chris.
Absolutely. It's been so fascinating and like entertaining and educational. And that's exactly what we hope to have when we have really bright guests come onto the show with us. For all those listening, we'll also have links available down in the description so you can get connected with Joshua here. Joshua, thank you for all of your time. Congratulations on all of your current success and your future success. And I hope all of our listeners can take actionable insights from what Joshua shared with us today and start moving their business forward. Joshua, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you.